Listen, I was paid in the past, Sean, for my opinions. That's clear. And one day I'll be back in that space. But that's not what I'm paid for now. I'm paid to be your deputy director, and we base investigations on facts.
All right, folks, this is stunning. Former MAGA podcaster and current deputy FBI director Dan Bongino shocked the world during an exchange with Sean Hannity on Fox News, in which Hannity, in a roundabout way, pressed Bongino about the inconsistencies of his opinions and stances when he was a MAGA podcaster versus deputy FBI director, only for Bongino to admit on Fox News that when he was a MAGA podcaster, he was paid to lie. And now that he's a deputy FBI director, a law enforcement official, he's got to tell the truth. He's got to stick to the facts. And then he hinted that once he leaves the FBI eventually to become a MAGA podcaster again, he'll probably traffic in lies and conspiracy theories for money. Again, it was a shockingly blunt and cynical thing to say. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. As Mediaite reports, Bongino stuns critics with frank admission on Fox News, says he lied for money and will likely do it again. Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino offered a surprisingly frank admission on Thursday night's episode of Hannity when pressed on his past suggestion that the January 6 pipe bombs placed at the DNC and RNC were likely, quote, an inside job. Bongino, a former Fox News host, has made several earnest remarks in recent months on his former network, including in May, complaining about the difficulties of his new job and flat out saying he doesn't like it. Hannity and Bongino spoke about the FBI's recent arrest of a suspect, responsible for placing the pipe bombs back in 2021, an act that has long fed the right's conspiracy mongers. Okay, so with that in mind, let's actually play the clip, and then we'll get into the reaction of it. Again, this is the second in command at the FBI, the guy who actually runs the day-to-day operations of the FBI, former Fox News host and MAGA podcaster Dan Bongino.
Remember, this is before you became the deputy FBI director. You put a post on X right after this happened, and you said there's a massive cover-up because the person that planted those pipe bombs, they don't want you to know who it is because it's either a connected anti-Trump insider or an inside job. You said that, long before you were even thought of as deputy FBI director.
Yeah, that's why I said to you, this investigation's just begun. We are pretty comfortable. We have our guy. I think again, legal process starts to surface and information, facts start to come out. The public's going to be very comfortable with the investigation that was conducted under Director Patel and his leadership. He's been great on this. But I don't want to, listen, I was paid in the past, Sean, for my opinions. That's clear. And one day I'll be back in that space. But that's not what I'm paid for now. I'm paid to be your deputy director. And we base investigations on facts. And,
do you understand what he just admitted there? I was paid for my opinions, and I'll probably go back to that. But as a law enforcement official, I deal with facts. So you admit you weren't dealing with facts when you were a MAGA podcaster. See, listen, I offer my opinion, but I don't think my opinions are in contravention or in contradiction with the facts, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't have that opinion. What Dan Bongino is saying is, yeah, my previous opinions and the facts actually exist in contradiction. I had a financial incentive to engage in non-fact-based opinions. Lies. Not speculation, lies. It's stunning. Stunning that he would admit it. The cynicism of that. It's not the first time he said something like that, as we discussed in the Mediaite article. Just being very open. I got paid to lie. Now I got to tell the truth because it's like part of the job. But don't worry, eventually I'll go back into the private sector and lie again. Don't you worry, Sean. I'll be there.
it was interesting. I was looking out in the crowd today at the presser, and I saw a couple of media figures who you and I both know who promoted the other scandal, the collusion hoax. And I thought to myself, the difference between us and them is, we evolve. As information and new inputs come out, we can produce different outputs because that's what we believe in. We believe in facts and investigations guided by facts. There were people out there in that crowd, I'm sure still believe in this collusion fairy tale hoax. So
now he's trying to spin it. Well, the people who believed in Russiagate, that's the difference between us is we update our opinions. No, you didn't say. See, he could have said, what he could have said was, look, Sean, there's a contradiction there. I was much too reckless with the speculation at the beginning, and I didn't have the facts to support it. And maybe I was inappropriately incentivized by money to say these incendiary, speculative, wildly off-base things. And I apologize for that. And now that I'm in a position of supreme public trust and authority as the deputy FBI director, Sean, I take much more seriously, and I've had to wrestle with that. I've been on a journey, Sean, where I realize now it's incredibly important to hew as close to the facts as humanly possible. Even when you step out and offer speculation or theories, you should try to root them in facts as much as possible. I didn't do that. I was irresponsible. I apologize. I am trying to be very, very different now, and the facts don't support my previous conclusions. And so I reject those conclusions, apologize for having made them in the first place. And you know what, Sean? If and when I eventually leave this position, and if and when I eventually return to media, I will take the lessons that I have learned about the responsibility of having influence and hewing close to the facts. And I will take those with me if and when I return to podcasts. Like, he could have said that. Instead, he was like, no, I got paid to give my opinions. It doesn't matter how far afield they were of the facts, and now I've got to stick to the facts, and it's inconvenient for me. But you know what? Maybe in the future, I'll do things differently. Maybe I'll go back to how I used to do them, when I was a MAGA podcaster. Stunning. Let's see. Media reporter Joe Perticone shared the clip and commented, Deputy FBI Director says he lied for money and will likely do it again in the future. Holy crap, what an admission, added The Atlantic's Tom Nichols. Below are other additional reactions. Edward Isaac Dover says, in which the previous FBI director, who is in his previous life a radio host, portrayed himself as a truth teller, now says he was just saying stuff back then and plans to go back to just saying stuff in the future. Lawrence Hurley says, a very candid admission about how the right-wing media landscape operates. Jim Laporta, interesting how the view changes when one leaves the easy comfort of opinion for the demanding realm of fact. Opinions come freely. Facts must be pursued. It's always harder to find the truth than to echo the noise. Adam Parkomenko says, does he realize what he just admitted? Or Vandalay, I give Bongino credit here for being honest about how he was misleading people in exchange for payment in his previous career as a media commentator. Dan Schaefer, a remarkably telling comment. RJC, not many people actually admit this. I appreciate the candor, as do I. I appreciate the candor. So let's take a look here. Media Matters also reporting on this. Dan Bongino lays bare the right-wing media grift. Sean Hannity's Thursday night interview with his former Fox News colleague and now FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino was remarkable, but not for any details Bongino relayed about the arrest of a suspect in the long-simmering January 6 pipe bomb investigation, which again, as we saw from the previous video, at least the initial reporting on this is that he told the FBI that he believed Trump's 2020 election lies and that he was a Trump supporter. Instead, the interview hinged on a stunning admission from Bongino that laid bare the core grift at the heart of the right-wing media complex, that people like Bongino, and by extension Hannity, make their money off tossing off reckless speculations that confirm their right-wing audience's biases and face no perceptible consequences if their claims turn out to be false. Let's see here. Hannity, during the interview with his former colleague, gave Bongino an opportunity to criticize prior iterations of the Justice Department and FBI for failing to arrest anyone in the case and praise his own colleagues for getting the job done. But then he asked Bongino about Bongino's own role in promoting conspiracy theories about the bomber during Bongino's past career. Bongino's response was astounding. He looked down, as if embarrassed, and said, yeah, that's why I said to you that this investigation has just begun. But after hemming and hawing about the confidence he and Kash Patel have that they arrested the right person, he got real. Again, you saw the quote, listen, I was paid in the past, Sean, for my opinions. That's clear, and one day I'll be back in that space, but that's not what I'm paid for now. I'm paid to be your deputy director, and we base investigations on facts. Bongino then pivoted to attacking reporters at the day's press conference and the Russia hoax. Bongino is offering the most charitable gloss on his past actions possible. Another way to put it is that his job as a commentator at Fox and elsewhere in the right-wing media was to provide chum for the viewers. They wanted conspiracy theories, so he gave them conspiracy theories. Now, he claims, he's at the FBI, and his job is to provide facts instead. But there's an entire ecosystem Bongino left behind, but to which he expects to return in the future, that is still filled with conspiracy mongers who concoct and disseminate lies to keep their audiences content and coming back for more. And as Bongino suggested, and as we saw in internal documents and testimony that election technology companies filed in lawsuits against Fox, those right-wing media figures don't necessarily believe what they're saying. Hannity, for example, said in a deposition that he had not believed, quote, for 1 second, that the 2020 election had been rigged against Trump, even though he spent weeks publicly promoting that lie to his viewers following the vote. These lies have consequences. While right-wing commentators may not believe what they're saying, some fraction of viewers believe what they're told. And sometimes the people inculcated with conspiracy theories end up taking action, even if that means storming the U.S. Capitol in an effort to overturn the election they've been assured was rigged. Indeed, on Friday morning, the CNN reported that during FBI interviews, the alleged pipe bomber, quote, told investigators that he believed the 2020 election was stolen. Perhaps he listened to too many people who were paid for their opinions. Yeah. So again, shocking, stunning admission of honesty from Dan Bongino, the fact that he was a paid liar and he wants to become a paid liar again in the future. But the facts are too often inconvenient for MAGA and Republicans and Donald Trump. So again, stunning stuff. Bongino should be thanked for his candor, but also it should also fuel contempt against him and for Hannity and so many others for engaging in this sort of baseless conspiracism that has given rise to so many of the problems that we face here in the United States. It's their fault. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.